A food bowl sits between two markers. One marker always means food, the other means empty. The tortoise knows this. But now the bowl is placed in the middle, ambiguous. The tortoise that approaches quickly is optimistic, expecting a reward. The tortoise that hesitates or avoids is pessimistic, expecting disappointment. This is the first cognitive bias test ever conducted on a reptile, and the results shattered 200 years of assumptions. University of Lincoln just proved reptiles have moods, long-term emotional states, like mammals, like birds, like us. July 2025, University of Lincoln, United Kingdom. Professor Anna Wilkinson and her team publish findings that rewrite reptile biology textbooks. 15 red-footed tortoises, cognitive bias tests, anxiety assessments, environmental enrichment variables. The goal: determine if reptiles experience mood states, not emotions. Moods. The difference matters. Emotions are short-term reactions, like fear or excitement. Moods are long-term background states, like optimism, pessimism, depression, or joy. And nobody had ever tested reptiles for this until now. The cognitive bias test originated in human psychology. When you're in a good mood, you interpret ambiguous situations optimistically, glass half full. When you're in a bad mood, you interpret the same situation pessimistically, glass half empty. This test has been validated in mammals, dogs, rats, primates, birds, starlings, crows, but reptiles. Everyone assumed they were different, cold-blooded, primitive, instinct-driven. Surely they don't have subjective moods. The University of Lincoln team decided to test that assumption with rocket leaves and red-footed tortoises. The results were published in Animal Cognition Journal. Red-footed tortoises demonstrated optimistic and pessimistic judgment patterns. Tortoises in enriched environments approached ambiguous bowls significantly faster. Optimistic bias. Tortoises in barren environments hesitated or avoided ambiguous bowls. Pessimistic bias. Same species, same individuals, different environments, different moods. This is the first clear evidence that reptiles experience long-term mood states, not momentary reactions. Sustained affective states. Verified, peer-reviewed, published. But here's what makes this profound. Mood isn't tied to immediate stimuli. A tortoise doesn't get scared and become pessimistic for 30 seconds. The mood persists for hours, days, potentially weeks. It colors how they perceive everything. An optimistic tortoise sees the world as rewarding. A pessimistic tortoise sees it as threatening or disappointing. This is subjective experience. This is sentience. And we just proved it exists in reptiles. If this kind of consciousness research is what you're here for, you're in the right place. The research team didn't stop at cognitive bias. They conducted anxiety tests. 2 types. First, novel object test. Place an unusual object in the tortoise's familiar arena. A colorful bead coaster. Measure their reaction. Confident tortoises approach and investigate. Anxious tortoises retract and avoid. Second, novel environment test. Change the arenas, colors, and textures. Measure exploration, behavior. Wait, before I show you those anxiety results, you need to understand what this means about reptile evolution. Reptiles diverged from the evolutionary line leading to mammals 320 million years ago. 320 million years before dinosaurs, before flowers. Mammals and birds developed mood states independently after the split. Or so we thought. But if tortoises have moods, if reptiles possess this capacity, it means one of two things. Either effective states evolved twice, independently, convergent evolution, or they evolved once, 320 million years ago, and persisted in both lineages. The anxiety test results matched the cognitive bias results perfectly. Tortoises that showed optimistic judgment also displayed less anxious behavior. They approached novel objects faster, extended their heads farther from their shells, explored new environments more actively. The pessimistic tortoises retracted, avoided, hesitated. The correlation was statistically significant. Mood influenced behavior across multiple contexts. If you've ever owned a reptile, you've witnessed this. The pet tortoise that explores, the one that hides. We dismissed it as personality, temperament, but it's mood, sustained, affective states. Do you own reptiles? Share what moods you've observed in the comments. This challenges every reptile biology textbook in existence. Cold-blooded doesn't mean emotionless. Primitive brain structure doesn't mean simple experience. We use reptilian brain as an insult, the part of us that's instinct-driven and unfeeling. But tortoises feel. They experience sustained moods that shape their perception of reality. Professor Oliver Berman called this a significant shift in our understanding. That's scientific understatement. This is revolutionary. Send this to anyone who thinks reptiles are simple. The evidence says otherwise. The implications for animal welfare are immediate. Reptiles are the fastest growing pet category globally. Tortoises, lizards, snakes, millions in captivity. Current care standards focus on physical health, temperature, diet, hydration. But if reptiles experience moods, if environmental enrichment affects their psychological well-being, then barren tanks aren't just boring, they're harmful. They induce pessimistic mood states, chronic stress, potential depression. Not because we're cruel, because we didn't know they could feel this way. Professor Anna Wilkinson stated, with reptiles becoming increasingly common as pets, it is essential for us to study their moods and emotions to try to understand how captivity may impact them, not might impact, does impact. The study proved it. Enriched environments produce optimistic moods. Barren environments produce pessimistic moods. The tortoise doesn't choose its environment. We do. Wait, I know what you're thinking, but reptiles don't show facial expressions. How can they have emotions? Let me show you why that question reveals our mammal-centric bias about consciousness. The statistical analysis is unambiguous. Tortoises in appropriate housing conditions displayed optimistic cognitive bias. They approached ambiguous locations faster, made optimistic judgments. The same individuals also showed significantly less anxious responses in novelty tests. P-value less than 0.05. Statistically significant correlation. Mood predicts behavior. Behavior confirms mood. This is empirical evidence of subjective experience in reptiles, a key component of sentience. This is why I investigate consciousness research. Subscribe if you want evidence-backed discoveries about which animals feel, think, and experience reality. We examine the peer-reviewed science that changes how we define awareness. But we're not done, because there's a legal dimension to this discovery. In the United Kingdom, the Animal Welfare Sentience Act 2022 recognizes the capacity of animals to feel, legally recognizes it. This influences how they're treated under law, which animals qualify. Mammals, birds, now potentially reptiles. The University of Lincoln study, provides scientific basis for extending sentience recognition to tortoises. And if tortoises qualify, what about other reptiles, lizards, snakes, crocodiles? The legal implications cascade. There are millions of pet tortoises worldwide, kept in glass tanks, plastic tubs, backyard enclosures. How many live in enriched environments? How many have climbing structures, hiding spots, varied textures, foraging opportunities? How many live in barren tanks with a heat lamp and water dish? Before this study, we didn't think it mattered. Physical health was enough. But if tortoises experience pessimistic moods in barren environments, if they suffer psychologically, then millions of animals may be experiencing chronic stress we never measured. The study's authors emphasize this isn't anthropomorphism. They're not saying tortoises feel exactly like humans. They're saying tortoises demonstrate measurable mood states using validated psychological tests. Optimism, pessimism, context-independent affective states that persist over time and influence behavior. This is the scientific definition of mood. But veterinary programs don't teach reptile psychology yet, not mood assessment, not cognitive bias testing, not environmental enrichment for psychological well-being. Now you know what reptile researchers discovered in 2025. Cold-blooded doesn't mean unfeeling. Have you studied veterinary medicine? Share what you learned about reptile care below. And here's where science meets policy. The UK Animal Welfare Act 2022 requires government departments to consider animal sentience when forming policy. But which animals? The Act doesn't specify species. It relies on scientific evidence to determine which animals possess sentience. Mammals, clearly, birds, established cephalopods, added recently based on research. Reptiles, contested until now. And I saved the most important policy evidence for last, because what the Lincoln study proves about legal sentience recognition could change welfare laws across Europe. United Kingdom, 2022, Animal Welfare Sentience Act passes, recognizes feeling capacity. United States, 2025. Multiple states consider reptile welfare legislation. European Union, 2025. Scientific committee reviews sentience evidence for law updates. Same question, same problem. Which animals feel? Who decides? 50 years ago, this question applied to fish. Today, consensus says yes. 20 years ago, octopuses. Now, clear evidence. Today, reptiles. The Lincoln study shifts the burden of proof. If you work in animal law, welfare policy, or veterinary medicine, share this. The legal landscape is changing based on this exact research. Your colleagues need to see it. Direct quote from the research implications. Understanding whether animals can experience moods and emotions is crucial for informing welfare standards. In the UK, the Animal Welfare Sentience Act 2022 recognizes the capacity of animals to feel, which directly influences how they are treated under the law. This isn't theoretical. This is active policy consideration. The Lincoln study is being cited in welfare committee reviews right now, not next year, now. In 2025, you will encounter reptile sentience debates in your lifetime. Pet store regulations, zoo standards, research protocols. The question is whether you understand the evidence before the laws. Change. Subscribe. This is where animal welfare policy is moving. So here's what we know. Red-footed tortoises experience mood states. Optimistic in enriched environments. Pessimistic in barren ones. The cognitive bias test proves it. Anxiety tests confirm it. This is the first evidence of reptile sentience using validated psychological methodology. The UK Animal Welfare Act recognizes sentience. This study provides scientific basis for including reptiles. Here's my take. If a tortoise can be optimistic or depressed based on its enclosure, every pet store tank that's bare substrate and a heat lamp is inducing psychological harm, not neglect, active harm. Every glass box, every plastic tub. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments. You can't unknow this. Every reptile enclosure you see, you'll evaluate it for psychological welfare. What should I investigate next? Highest upvoted comment gets the deep dive. Next investigation. Dolphins have a WTF whistle. Woods Hole researchers won a $100,000 prize for decoding dolphin language, query function, alarm function, language-like words, verified. If these verified sentience discoveries matter to you, subscribe and hit the bell. I investigate published animal consciousness research every week. Real studies, real evidence, no speculation. Click here for dolphins, or this one for goats. See you there.